Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here representing Jason Blaha Strength and Fitness, and today I thought I would answer an interesting question I got the other day. But a quick reminder, if you guys will please click like down below, it'd be greatly appreciated. If you're not subscribed or following, please do so. And if you'll be kind enough to drop me a comment down below, I would appreciate that so much. So let's get over to the topic. Someone had asked me, Jason, do 1-rep maxes contribute to muscle growth? It's an interesting question because I always see people who say, no, not at all. See other people say, yeah, they absolutely do. And here's the thing that we have to observe. We have to observe some of the lifters out there who do live on heavy singles. Let's set aside even the Bulgarians. Let's set aside the weightlifting community to some extent because there's a lot of technique involved in their snatches and cleans. But when we come over to but even then, a lot of them get fairly big, but they also do accessories. So we can't always use them. But when we use people I've seen out there who mostly do singles, I've seen some guys who do some of the Bulgarian light type training very successfully, who are still pretty dang jacked. Okay, so we need to be clear, they are pretty dang jacked. There's real world observations of that, and I'm going to go in a minute into the concept of effective reps. I am going to say that obviously, I'm going to say yes, they do contribute to hypertrophy, but they're not super efficient, right? In other words, if your goal was to maximize muscle growth, it's not going to be the fastest or most efficient route to get you there. Does that make sense? It's one of those cases of, yeah, they absolutely will contribute. But on their own, are they really going to be enough? But as part of a larger structured program, now that's the interesting question. But by themselves, so let's think about that. Especially, I think, with muscle memory. And what I have to use as an example, do you guys remember when I took over a year off from squatting? I basically did deadlifts. Okay, my only quad work was deadlifts. I did that for like a year and a half. Then I started squatting again. I started with like 365, like I was struggling with that, built up to 405 within a couple of weeks, and then I just started squatting almost every day, right? Just doing a heavy single, ramping up to a training max, doing the whole Bulgarian thing like 6 days a week, right? I did that for 6 or 7 months before I got absurdly sick of it. My squat went from that like around 400 up to 485 doing nothing but singles, and my legs got bigger again. Now, in that case, people would say, yeah, but you also had muscle memory because you had previously had a slightly better squat than that just a couple of years before. And that's a fair, very fair assessment. And I would say that to some extent does discount my experience for someone who only wanted to get big, right? So I could look at that and go, my legs kind of came back up quite a bit. They came back up quite a bit. And my legs have never needed high volumes for me to get them big. I could always do fairly low reps, fairly low volumes, and use high tension, and my quads blow up. Quads and glutes and everything. But that's me genetically. But, they did grow, and my squat got up to almost 500 pounds again. Doing that. And let me be clear, I wasn't doing like other quad work, okay? So I want to be clear on that. I was just squatting singles. Man, I've known other people with similar stuff. So what I'm going to say though, and I've known of powerlifters, I've always heard stories. I remember Jamie Lewis and other people throwing around stories like that. Certain guys who were supposedly documented to just do the big three real heavy, minor amounts of supplemental work, who were real strong and real jacked still back in the day, even powerlifting. So there is certainly some truth to it, right? Even the Boogs did kind of something like that. There's certainly truth to it. Here's what I'm going to say. I think as part of a larger program, though, it can absolutely add quality hypertrophy. Meaning, like even kind of look at what I've been messing with a little bit lately, coming back up during my cut of just, some of this video will be up later because I'm going to do a couple versions of it. But I've done stuff where heavy singles and then sled work. Now that works. Why? What about if you do heavy singles on the bench, but then you do higher rep dips afterwards? Well, we fall back over into all that data we have on doing a heavy single before doing volume work. There were studies showing better muscle fiber activation. And I've always said doing a training max, a heavy single before tens, is an absolutely, truly effective way to get big and strong. So I think that this does carry over in that case, meaning it does produce more efficient work, right? It will get you better hypertrophy from that stuff, but a person could literally just max on their big three and do their other lifts afterwards, some other stuff, and they'll get pretty dang big. And I think that can be very efficient. Okay. But people will say, but is it contributing? But isn't it contributing as part of the overall load? Especially if you're ramping up to a max, like let's say, you're getting a couple reps at 90% or higher as you're ramping up towards it. Well, those are effective reps. Because if we're going to argue about effective rep theory, and then we come over and say some of these studies show as little as 3 sets per workout taken close to failure can cause really good muscle growth. People argue sometimes if it's nearly maximum. Well, are we not hitting those same muscle fibers? If you're doing a weight above 90% for any reps, just one, are we not right there at the same threshold of muscle failure in terms of mechanical tension on all those fibers? We know that we are. Is that going to contribute to muscle growth? Yes. Is it going to be enough to stimulate large amounts? I don't know about that. At least off muscle memory, it was for me and my legs. It definitely was in that case. But it was also muscle memory. But I will say in the context of when you do it and then you do other volume behind it, I think that it absolutely creates a pronounced effect, because you are probably getting some muscle growth from that training max or that max, right? That 1 rep max is giving you some muscle growth stimulus. But then if you're coming behind it and you're doing other rep work with similar muscles, we have plenty of data showing a more effective and efficient muscle fiber recruitment there and neural drive. So in that case, are you getting slightly more muscle growth for those sets? So now we're really getting somewhere. So what happens if you do a heavy single then followed by 3 sets of 10 close to failure or to failure? Is that going to give more muscle growth than just doing the sets of 10? And I think the answer is yes. And I think we can safely and fairly make that claim. And I don't think it's unreasonable based upon our observations in the real world, observations in the lab. I think that sort of approach can be very effective and very efficient, right? It can be again, a very effective way to go. I'm not saying it's the only means, but I think it can work. And I think where this works is when people are trying to get big, but they want to really get strong concurrently, especially maintain a technique of doing max work. I think this is where it shines. So yes, it can contribute to your muscle growth, but you're probably not going to get super big doing it on its own, at least not at a reasonable pace, right? And that's the answer.